Good afternoon. We are live here in the Academy and this is our very first ever Friday feedback. So it could go horribly wrong, who knows? I have set up my iPad with the plan that I will be able to literally paint straight onto your your paintings and give you some hints and tips of perhaps how I would go about doing things. But having said all that, that doesn't mean you have to literally follow me to the letter. In actual fact, most of the work that's been presented to me is absolutely fabulous. These are just a little bit of feedback for things for you to think about for future classes and things like that. So we have Richard here in the Academy and we have Hazel and we have Fred here in the chat as well, which is great because I happen to be doing Hazel and Fred's and Bertha's actually, so hopefully she'll pop on as well. I'm not expecting it to be a huge session today, only 20-30 minutes. We'll see how it all goes. So with that said, let's jump on over to my iPad. I'm quite excited by the fact that I've figured all this technology out. So here we go. What you've got here is on the main screen, which you don't see my hands on the main screen because obviously that's just the feed straight from my iPad. But over here I've actually put the camera that's above me normally on the painting. I've actually directed that straight to the iPad so you can actually see what my hands are doing as well. So hopefully that will give you some decent feedback. So hi Rich, hi Hazel, hi Fred. Let's dive in. Hopefully you're all as excited by our very first ever Friday feedback. One of many, I hope, going forward. We'll just kind of see how all of this goes. Are you able to chat, Gary? Because for some reason, can you type on the chat? Because for some reason it's not working for me.
Yeah, I'm tapping, yeah.
Are you getting chat coming through?
Yeah, Richard's not got audio working, he's trying to fix that.
Okay, so are you, can you hear?
I'm speaking to everybody.
Right, you can hear, right, for some reason, let me just see if I can give that a quick refresh, see if that does anything at all. Oh yeah, I can see it now. Good morning, dear friends. Hello from, couldn't see the chat. I could see people in the chat, but I couldn't actually see the actual conversation that was going on. But it's back, amazing, refreshed. So we've done, yes, Hazel's saying she loves the technology. Really exciting what we're able to do. And again, hopefully, without giving you too much away about January's workshop, you really do need to be on that one. Every one of you do need to be on that one. It's going to be a really, I'm going to say life-changing event. It's definitely going to be something that we filter through all of our future workshops and some of the past ones as well. So anyway, without further ado, let's dive in. So this one is Fred's. So reading what I always get you to do when we're doing the Friday feedback is actually to give me your positives, give me your negative, what do you like, what don't you like, and also what was your struggles and things like that. So reading my notes and what Fred is saying, if I can just move that out the way. Fred's saying he's happy with the vase overall, and quite rightly he should be, as this is his first still life. He's not happy with the main sunflower and the petals. I think I have a reason why that happened, and I didn't feel like I got the shapes of the leaves right, didn't capture the bends. Well, I slightly disagree with you on that one. I think your leaves are fabulous, but we can go through a few things. So this is Fred's. If I just drop and open up my layers window, and again, forgive me. Richard's back, right, fabulous. So Richard's now got sound. Forgive me with the terminology. I am still getting to grips with the iPad. I'm quite chuffed with what I've learned, but I am still getting to grips with it. And a couple, Fred particularly, but a couple of other people have actually said they'd like to know how I'm using the iPad, and those possibly future lessons for next year, how I'm using it. I want to be careful because I'm doing a course myself and I don't want to step on anybody's toes. I don't want to be doing something that you could be getting from the course that I'm actually doing. You know, it's just ethical. But I can certainly show you some of the ways I'm using it from an art related point of view and how I'm using it to put compositions and things like that together. I think you'll enjoy it. So drop into my layers window. You can see here, this is Fred's original. I'm going to move up a layer now where I'm going to do the adjustments, which means I can flick to and fro between the adjustments layer and you know, the original, so you can see whether it's worth, you know, whether what I'm suggesting is worth considering. That's the theory anyway. Okay, so he likes his vase, and I agree. I think the vase is absolutely fabulous. I like everything about it. I think where you're struggling with this main flower, there's nothing wrong per se with the main flower, maybe a little bit of saturation in terms of some glazing, but what I'm actually seeing is what's behind it is really bright. So for me, I think a little bit of shading for the flowers behind will help that come forward. Now I've actually inserted mine, so if I jump over to mine, again, this isn't about you trying to paint exactly what I've done, but you will notice on here I have got quite a lot of shadow, certainly on these white flowers behind, which is pushing the yellow, the main flower, forward. So that's what I would be suggesting with this one. So let's jump. I'm going to jump to a soft brush, like an airbrush. So think of this as a glaze. You're going to be thinning down your oil paints. I'm going to make it transparent. So if I lower this here on the side, it lowers the opacity. So here would be very thick opaque paint, and if I lower that down, that's equivalent to me adding a little bit of medium on there. Now I'm going to select the colour that you've already got, which is this nice shadow colour here, and you can see up here it changes that colour. Now if I click on that, I would definitely recommend you go a little darker. So I'm going to just drop that down to a slightly darker. We'll still keep it warm, but we'll just make that a little bit darker, and we'll see how that goes. So if I was to, let me just grab my little fingerless gloves. This helps you stop making marks on the iPad with your wrist and your hand. Very clever little thing. You can get them nice and cheap on Amazon. So if I just come across here, cancel that. We're on here. Turn it on, that would help. Again, I'm still very much a beginner where the iPad is concerned. I'm going to just reduce the size, so I'm using a small brush, and I want to just shade the bottom of these tulips. Hopefully that makes sense. What I'm actually doing is trying to bring this main flower forward by shading around it, and we can go a little darker still. Let's just make that slightly, I'm going to take it back to the slightly warmer colours. Ooh, throwing my pencil. That's how lightly I hold my paintbrushes. I'm forever flinging my paintbrushes, and I do the same with the iPad as well, with the pencil. So I'm just going a little bit darker right at this base, and very, very lightly. And again, I have lowered the opacity slightly so that we can, you know, again, you would be thinking of this in terms of adding a little bit of a glaze on here. Now I think even at that early stage, so let's just have a quick look at the difference between the two. And you can see the difference between the two. Now the only other thing I would do in terms, so that would help bring, and you could do that with all of your, everything that's surrounding this flower. So for example, this red, if I go here and I change the darkness of that red just slightly, and again, just darken around this lower section. It's not changing too much, and we'll do the same with the green. And you can see I'm just dropping that to make it a little bit darker. So all you would do in terms of adding paint is just a darker glaze of the main colours that you've used. So for example, with this one, a dark glaze of alizarin crimson. And I think even at that stage, you can see such a big difference. How that brings the flower forward. And then the other thing I would do is really look to the saturation. You could probably do it on all three of your flowers. And so if I select your yellow, you've done what I did when I was doing the initial, is you've got quite a lot of yellow. If I go back to here as well, and later on, and I did mention this in the tutorial, I went and put a yellow glaze on that, and that's what's really made it pop a little bit more. And I think that's what you need. If you look at your yellow, I can see there's a lot of white in that. So what I'm going to do is just increase that saturation a little bit, so it's much more of a brighter yellow. And by bright, I mean a more saturated, less white in it. So again, you're talking about a thin glaze, and let's see how that looks. There we go. So that yellow, and you could probably go even, so I would be using a very thin down cadmium yellow. Where you've got white, I'd be using a little bit of thin down cadmium yellow. That's not to go into your shadows, that's just for brightening and bringing a little more saturation. You can see here with these white tips, but just bring a little bit more saturation of that colour. It doesn't have to be everywhere, but we tend to, in order to lighten something, we'll add white on it, but white will often grade out, it will take out the chroma of the colour, desaturate it. So sometimes you do have to lighten it, put that on, and then I'll let it dry and put a, you know, a more purer colour without the white on the top. So that is how I would be dealing with that. And then before we do the final reveal, I'm going to also have a look at your leaves. I love your leaves. Like for example, this one here to me looks as though it's tipping away. And if I change your colour a little bit, just, again, this is glazing. So for me, this would be a little sap green, just glazing this lower edge, keep that lighter edge there. And then you could go a little bit darker, so maybe a touch of blue with the sap green, and just get that other side. And you can see even there we have a bit more of a leaf. And same with over here, just a little bit of, and I am putting this on with a transparent layer, so it's going on as a glaze, just darkening. So you can see even here, by darkening that one side, it makes it look as though that leaf is folded over. So it's just adding that little extra saturation. A little bit darker. And again, just adjust it with a little touches of blue and black, that green with touches of blue and black as you go further into. And again, back here where we're around that flower, we can make it quite dark. And again under here, if I give that a little shading, and here, and even here between, this really pushes out that flower. Does that all make sense, Fred? Let me know if that's all making sense.
He's actually already commented that it's a great
It's wonderful, yes.
feedback.
So yeah, Fred's saying it's a wonderful way to provide feedback. And it is. Again, if I go one step further with this, let's go into your orange here. Nice and bright. It's quite, let's make it just a little bit more saturated. And again, you could, as well as sort of using that yellow, that saturated yellow, you could just enhance. And you can see how little I'm doing to this. You can just enhance a few of your shadows, especially at this lower edge, not onto your dark area, but you can just bring a little bit more of that lovely strong shadow right at the bottom. And I think that will really make your main flower pop a little bit more. So it's darkening what's around it, a little bit of glazing on your leaves, and then just adding a bit more saturation to that main flower. So let's have a look at the before and after. So that's how it was before, and that's how it is with just those little adjustments. And I hope you can see that. It looks great to me. That slight difference just gives it that little bit more of an oomph. Yes, I get it and appreciate the help. Wonderful. So that one's Fred's. I'm going to move on. Is Bertha here with us?
No.
Right, okay. Well, I'll leave Bertha's off for now.
Sandra's.
Hi, Sandra. Lovely to have you joining us. So again, I think that one's quite, you know, you can really see the difference between those two. So if I turn Fred's off now, and I'm going to move on to Hazel's. So Hazel sent me this one first, and I wanted to keep it on because I really think it's quite interesting how the light affects your photograph. So she's took this one, and I knew she'd taken this one at night time. And then I got her to send me a daytime one, and that's the difference. So already you can see a massive difference in the colour. So little hint to you going forward, Hazel, always take your photo at during the daytime, because it does make a big difference. I am going to put some lessons on how I actually take photographs using my iPhone, because a lot of you have your photos on funny angles and things like that. It is quite important to try and get it straight. So I'll put some little tips and things on there as well at some point. I'll add it to my ever-growing to-do list. So okay, so moving on to Hazel's, but again, I'd wanted to show you that night scene. I'm actually going to turn that one off, and we'll move on to the adjustments layer. Now Hazel, going to my notes, she's pretty pleased with the vase, and again, rightly so. I do like the shadows in here. I really do think there's some real strong shadows in there, which I really do like. I think my tulips aren't very tulip-like, and I struggled with the composition. I feel it looks lopsided. So firstly, with the composition looking lopsided, it's quite difficult for me to judge because you've actually took a bit of a lopsided photograph. But having said that, I think I do know what you mean. And again, if I look at mine, what I'm seeing with yours particularly is this very obvious two shapes. And if you remember, I had my little weird leaf, which I wasn't happy with, but I actually... excuse me, but I actually think with having that, I have less of a separation between the two areas. I've got that little leaf in there, and these seem, it feels much more of an ovally shape as opposed to a separation. For me, Hazel, all you really need to do is just to add a few more, bring a bit more of these in. And again, only if you want to. These are optional. So if I switch now to, let's try slightly harder brush. So what I've done is I've selected the red colour that you've used, and I'm going to just get onto the right layer. I'm just going to squeeze a couple of extra ones in here, just to this cut-in part here that you're seeing. I think if we break that up, now again, I'm doing these pretty quick, but it will give you a little bit of an idea. And then we can put on some of these. Obviously, you're going to spend way longer doing this than I am. But even just those three gives you a little bit more of a balance in there. And then I think even possibly, let's go with that shadow colour, you could bring a little of this up. Let me just have a quick glance at mine. Yeah, if you notice, I brought mine, and let's cut in front of that a little. And maybe even a bit in front of here, just to help with some of that balance. And get a few highlighted things on there. This is what I've been doing with photos, by the way, just kind of painting over them and adjusting them to make them, you know, more painting friendly. So again, pushing something behind your little yellow flower over here, your sunflower over here will also be quite helpful. So I feel like, and again, obviously I've done this very, very quickly, but I feel like that actually makes a slight difference to that composition. It stops feeling, it's almost like you've got your flowers here with a little afro thing going on, and by just adding a few extra bits in there, I think that gets rid of that. Does that make sense, Hazel? I think she's saying what a difference. So yeah, it does make a difference adding those little bits in there. Now, what was the other comment? She's happy with the vase, and then it was the tulips as well. I actually think your tulips look great, but we're going to go back to what I suggested with Fred, is a little bit of glazing. So let's select your colour. I'll go back to a soft brush. So we're back to glazing now, which will help round things off. So and again, if you feel like you can always just widen that bottom slightly to give it a little more of that tulipy. And again, I'm shading this side because it distracts your eyes from that sort of off shape, if you like. And again, a little around there. I don't think these are bad at all. A little bit of shading on there. And then I'll select that red and we will go a little bit darker. And again, just that shading right at the bottom. And then we can highlight. Let me choose your highlight colour. What you can do is bring that light over and kind of reshape that way. I don't like that. Let's change that. Nice thing about iPads is you can just tap your fingers and it gets rid of what you've just done. So I think that's a bit of light on there. I'm just trying to close this gap slightly, and then we'll wrap that around so it's more of a crossover, if you like. That makes sense? Yeah, I think that works. I think these work. Perhaps this is the one you're really concerned with. And all I've done with mine is I've just lightened the tips. Let's stay with the red colour that you're using. Make it just a bit brighter. And again, just selecting that outer edge. I think is going to be enough. What do you think, Gary? So,
I agree.
I'm just gonna, what's going on? I'm going to do the same with yours. I do want that slightly darker at the bottom here. Right, it's decided it's not playing, so I don't know quite why. Honestly, let's go back. If in doubt, close it down. There we go. So again, I would do a little bit more shading at this bottom. Notice how I'm rounding that upwards. And again with this one. So again, a little bit of shading. You could definitely also add a little more saturation. So let's make that a little brighter. to some of the tips of your yellow rose, your yellow sunflower, just a little, where it's a bit white and it's just kind of getting that slightly more saturated colour. You don't need so much on yours, but I think a little might make a big difference. What do we think? They look like tulips. Yes, the red one was the worst. Yeah, it's just having that edge. You really don't see a lot going on this one, so don't make a big deal of it. It's just, you know, getting that slightly lighter edge. So if we just have a look at the before and after, I think you can really see, again, it's a nice big difference. I've done hardly anything at all, but I think it makes a difference. So again, it's entirely up to you whether you go ahead and change your painting and add these different things. If you're going to do it, obviously make sure you're completely dry, and then if you don't like anything, you can wipe that off. But hopefully that's been helpful. Hazel's saying they look like tulips and the red one was the worst. So we're quite happy with how that looks. I think that makes a difference.
What about, you know, the red one that's at the midline?
This one?
Yeah, have you, because I'm
same,
like lagging behind you, the same, you've only got a portion on show, so how would you deal with that one?
It's the same thing, it's where it's disappearing. If everything's all the same value, which it is there, well, it can't be because it's going behind something. So if I go back to that red, I'm going to deepen it and darken it. So this would be an alizarin crimson. And again, just put in that tiny little bit of shadow. And you could do that with all of your, you know, your little buds and your lily buds and everything. You know, just add in that small amount of shading will make all the difference at the bottom. So let me do a little bit on this one. So this would be like sap green with maybe a little touch of black, or even just the sap green on its own you probably would get away with. But I think it makes a difference is getting that bit of shading. You know, as they're going into this cluster, they're going to be a little bit darker at the bottom. And the same with around here. If I go a little darker, you can also underneath, you can create some shadow. Like for example here, if I create a little petal shaped shadow, it will look like it's casting a shadow onto the leaf. So these are just, this is the final details. We did all the final details, but then you can let it dry and then think, right, okay, have I got enough shadows in there? Mostly that's always going to be your big thing. It's not always about adding more light. 9 times out of 10, it's about adding more shadows, because we have this simultaneous contrast. As soon as you start to add a shadow, for example, in here, as soon as you start to add that shadow, your lights become lighter naturally. So Hazel's saying thank you for the feedback, much welcomed. You are very welcome. So I'm going to turn that one off and we'll just have a look at Bertha's. And again, I think these are all really successful paintings. Now she's just said, I'm happy. Thank you for your comments on this painting and wonder if I went too dark with the burnt sienna on the bottom. I actually think not. I think it looks really nice. The only thing that's caught my attention with this one is this looks, and actually it was Gary who pointed it out, this looks to be floating, and it needs, so it's almost like the plinth is floating, and it just needs a little bit of a shadow underneath. And this is probably the only thing that I would adjust on this one, is by getting a little bit of something underneath so it looks like we have a plinth area. These tools are so good, aren't they? Am I writing on the right one yet? So even just that little bit alone, and again, if we have a, hopefully you can see the difference in that as well. Now I would definitely, I know she's saying she thought she was too dark here. I don't agree, because we've got this plinth here. and it still looks a little, we've got a bit of extra in there, but it still looks a bit of a floating shelf. With mine here, you'll see, because I'm right on the edge, whereas with Bertha's, she's not quite, she's a bit further into the painting than I am. I would still go and put a slightly darker layer on here. Let's go with something like that. And I'm going to just do that as a very light glaze, just at this lower edge, almost to get a bit of a lost edge at the bottom. So you've got that slightly darker, and then we can just go even darker still right at this lower edge, and then I'll just start to lower the opacity and gently blend that in to what we've already got. And I think that makes a difference. Let's give that a little blend. And I think, what do you think to that? Let's have a look at the before and after. And I do think, again, it makes that, you could go even darker on this little plinth as well. Let's go a little bit darker still, especially right underneath. And I think that makes a difference. Do you, Gary?
I do. Although I'm a few seconds behind you.
Yeah.
On my feed.
I think that does make a difference. So that's probably the only adjustment that I would do on here. I think it's fantastic. Again, everybody has done an amazing job. But those are the only little things that, again, caught my eye. It was a little bit floating, and I do think just a little bit of that plinth and some shading at the bottom will make all the difference. Beyond that, I think it's fantastic. Everybody has done a great job. So, Fred's saying well done, Hazel, and again, yeah, everybody has done a great job, and I'm really, really pleased with how the whole workshop went, and I'm pleased with mine. I've actually put an oiling out layer on mine today, and it will get varnished hopefully over the weekend and in the shop, ready for selling. So I've enjoyed it. It was definitely a workshop I enjoyed doing. Well, hopefully you have found that helpful. I was ever so excited when I realised I was able to stream my iPad directly to you guys and get my head around all this techie stuff. I'm getting quite clever these days. I'm feeling quite clever with all this technical stuff. So, but that's it from me, guys. I hope you found this helpful. Let me know if you're going to do those adjustments, and if you are, don't forget to come and share with everybody in the community, and also on Facebook. Please let people know about these classes. Things are really quiet at MazArt at the moment, so it would be nice if you guys went out there and let others know about these amazing workshops. And hopefully you will all be there for the January. Gary's saying, isn't she clever? All self-taught, as she reminds me. Absolutely. I have OCD. You will all get to know over time. Fred's saying, thanks a lot for sharing this. I'm off to learn Procreate. I had never thought about using it as a what-if tool. Honestly, I put all sorts in here now, and I'm really getting to grips with it. And I will start sharing some of the ways I'm using it to put things. You can cut things out of one photograph and another and put everything together. So I've been having fun doing stuff like that. And again, I think you have seen bits of me doing it, but I am getting a bit better with using some of the brushes as well. So I have put a link in the community of the course I'm actually doing. So I am doing a workshop. I think I've still got some of the lessons on here. Let me see if I have. Yeah, so these are some of the workshops that I've been doing. Oh, I did this one of my two boys. Again, digital paint. I was very pleased with this one. There are a few errors, but which I can't figure out how to fix, but I was very pleased with this one. And again, I am doing a course myself, so it's definitely worth looking into some of the courses. And I will also put a link to some of the workshops that I've, some of the free stuff that I've been getting on Facebook. Not Facebook, sorry, on YouTube. There's a guy I follow on there that does some amazing Procreate start to finish landscapes. So I'll send you a link for him inside the community as well. So anyone who wants to have a go at like the Bob Ross, he does some wonderful, he's done some Halloween things, he'll do Christmas things. So it's very, you know, all free tutorials that you can learn. Obviously he has a Patreon as well, he's hoping you'll subscribe. But I do follow him on YouTube, so I'll put a link to him as well. Like I said, I'm still classing myself very much as a beginner, but I am really enjoying how I can use this for my artwork. You know, all of a sudden I've got great interest in it because of that reason. So so Sandra's here. She said she's really enjoyed the session, and you know, you guys hopefully will take from that and, you know, do a little bit of improving. Just remember, when you get to the end of these sessions with me, let it dry and then think shading, mostly shading, sometimes highlighting, but mostly shading. Can you add a little bit more with some glazing? Right, I'm done. I'm off to the Trafford Centre. I must be absolutely crazy, but I'm off to the Trafford Centre with my daughter, and it's Black Friday. I don't know what I'm thinking, but you know, any time to spend with her, I usually jump at. So we're off shopping, Christmas shopping today. So wish me luck. Well, that's it from me, guys. And I think you're all sorted, Gary. Yeah.
I am. Yeah.
Wonderful.
Absolutely. I think
Hopefully
they all did a brilliant job.
They have. Honestly, all of the paintings were all fabulous. I'm really, really pleased. And these workshops are so much fun for me to give to you guys and work with you, paint with you. It's so much fun. That's it from me. I've talked enough, and I wanted to keep this. I don't know how long we've been. Well, 38 minutes. Well, yeah, I chat too much. I talk too much. So. Have a fabulous day, all of you, and I shall see you all on Wednesday. I'm looking forward to our Christmas painting. But that's it from me, guys. I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye for now.